Welcome to Selling Circular, the podcast dedicated to exploring the innovative minds and business models shaping our transition to the circular economy. I'm Sabira Lakhani, VP of Product at Reekly. Currently, I have some news that after almost 5 years, I'm going to be transitioning out to another role. So I'll mention that in a future episode.
Another role, new company, specifically.
Company.
Yes. So very cool. Welcome back to season 6. I'm Garr, CEO of Loop Layer. Still working very, very hard. Still grinding at it. There will be more on that soon, actually. I'll be able to talk more about a new product release coming out at the end of the summer. So yes, that will be fun to be able to talk about then. But that's not all we have actually to announce. We've got new things coming out for season 6. We're going to do some short form content. I want to play around with doing some explainer videos. People love that stuff. So we're just going to kind of play around and see what that can do to educate more audiences around circular economy. And also, continuing the educational theme, we're going to be launching a Substack. Previously, we've been launching our podcast on Substack, but now we want to explore some more thoughts and a platform to do that, which is a great Substack opportunity. So great season 6 coming. So yeah, we got a lot going. And today is also what a great episode to start out this season. This guest in particular means a lot to you, but I'll introduce her and then we can talk further about her and why it's important to you. Today we have an incredible conversation with Wilma Rodrigues, really a true pioneer in India's waste management revolution. Wilma is the founder and former CEO of Saahas Zero Waste, a company that has transformed how commercial facilities across India think about and manage their waste streams. Why was this one so important to you?
Oh, wow. Well, I joined Saahas Zero Waste when I lived and worked in India. I was with them as the head of client management and operations. So basically, I was in charge of working with our customers to install and run decentralized waste operations across Bangalore. And then we also grew beyond. And basically, this was my foray into deep circular economy work, which was amazing.
I mean, if anybody's heard us before in these episodes, this is almost that time in India was so formative for you, that you got to almost translate what you've learned from the States to India and then back. And I think that was, I've always loved hearing your Indian stories. So
yeah, I mean, they're really fun, and they're also very visceral because we talk about in circular economy, there's so many groups of atoms that we're thinking about, different types of things, but municipal solid waste is very high volume, have to figure out, and in a country of 1.4 billion people with poor infrastructure. Yeah, anyway, well,
we get into that a little bit because we end up talking about all of those pressures of density and population and waste piling up, that's what caused a very unique environment for some progress. So we'll get into that.
Yeah. And what makes Wilma's story compelling is this is 20 to 30 years ago when literally nobody was thinking about waste as an issue. She has turned waste management from a cost center into value prop. When I was there, they had started really with one customer, and now when I was there, we grew it to 10. We were managing 10 tons of waste per day, then to 30. Now they're handling over 100 tons of waste daily, serving technology parks, corporate campuses, and this is beyond Bangalore now. Now they're growing across the country. And what's really amazing is that we have started to change the relationship between waste generators, waste processors, and formalizing it in a way that wasn't really there before.
I don't know if this is unique to our industry. I doubt it is, but maybe impact in general of when you work so closely with a company that's trying to solve something and trying to do things differently. I noticed you said we again. You still placed yourself there. I find myself doing it all the time with Reekly. Yeah. I find myself doing it with companies that I felt so a part of in bringing that impact and really trying to pursue that growth. And so I just love that that we may never change in that way.
Yeah.
And that it's always going to be, we did this together and we're still trying to. And I think you actually get a sense of that in this podcast, which makes it very charming that you automatically are just like, hi. and so, but really under Wilma's leadership, Saha developed into what they really have pioneered, the decentralized waste management model in India that is keeping materials in productive use rather than sending them to landfill. And so by doing this, they've created these sophisticated sorting systems that can separate waste into over 30 different categories, ensuring that maximum recycling and recovery takes place. So this approach has become so refined, and this is almost what we aspire to be, that they provide premium feedstock to recyclers, which is actually now creating value from once what was considered real waste. It's incredible.
Yeah. And there's a lot of reasons for that we will get into.
We get into it.
Yeah. And beyond that core business, what was also really inspiring while I worked there is that Wilma always was thinking about the next horizon. Like she's moved on to e-waste, to textiles, repair services. We would sell Tetra Pak products. So you could you could get a chair made out of Tetra Pak product if you wanted to, or recycle Tetra Pak. So it was always innovative, always pushing the boundary. And she has done this while also committing to fair wages, great working conditions for her staff, and that you can see that it's possible to run a circular economy business that's profitable and socially responsible. And so what you'll hear today is how she built the business, the challenges, especially of convincing customers in India to pay for this kind of service, complexity of running multiple waste streams and managing them. And of course, like the main thing is like fighting the fight and persistence on trying to change ingrained behaviors around waste in India.
I loved meeting her because I had heard of her before. I mentioned that in the podcast coming up, but I think she is now one of those heroes for me because of how long she's been pushing this boulder up this hill and achieving successful marks at doing so and paving the way for so many. And if you can do that in an economy like India that is just rushing forward on so many fronts, that's just an incredible achievement. And she transitioned recently from her role as CEO to focus more on expanding the Saahas almost geographic reach. So she transitioned out of this role and has taken it to a new region in India. But her insights are still nonetheless relevant to us today on the podcast as scaling circular models are becoming more and more relevant in their geography as well as ours. So whether you're an entrepreneur thinking about circular opportunities or simply curious about what the future of waste management looks like, this conversation will give you that front row seat to one of the most successful circular economy businesses in operation today. We don't say that lightly. This was just that cool.
It is for real. And I will say also, the community created of the team working there, we actually still have a live WhatsApp group that we stay in touch with of alumni.
Wow, so the we is very real.
It's very real and it's broad. And so I so deeply appreciate her working on that boulder. And yeah, as you said, creating the space for others to build our own careers. It's been really, I'm really grateful for it. So let's get into our conversation with Wilma Rodrigues. Well, I'm so happy that you're joining us, Wilma. I was reflecting actually that I left India in 2018 and now we're in 2025. So it's been 7 years since I left. And my pride for working for Saahas has not left me. And I think it's because we brought so much progress in so short amount of time. And I know it was like a critical moment in the Saahas Zero Waste's journey to win a customer like RMZ, which had a huge footprint in Bangalore, and get these like operations up and running and doing decentralized waste services at scale. And I feel like really so happy to be part of that story that I like share it all the time.
I mean, I have pride at this point. I've heard so much about you that I'm excited to be a part of this interview. So yes.
But maybe tell us, since since over the past 7 years, like what has been like the next phase of Saahas that has been motivating you and driving you to keep the growth and the scale going? That was, a different time, a different phase. So maybe catch us up. What's been the crowning jewels for you over the last few years?
This is the right time to discuss this because we have just last week completed our AOP. And Sabira, you are familiar with the annual operating plan tradition that we have had for the last 8 years, where we have it in 2 phases. Once the leadership team comes together, and then the larger team also has its planning that we do here on here, so that we make sure that we are all aligned and we are all on track for the kind of expansion, growth, impact that we wish to achieve here on here. So it's so good, Sabira, that you start this conversation with RMZ, because RMZ continues to be our lighthouse project that is a guiding star actually for the other larger, bigger tech parks that we have across India. So it continues to be there because RMZ, what we started was, this tech park called Eco World. It was called Eco World. So, they had to kind of walk the talk on that as well. So I just like to kind of little bit talk about what happens in these tech parks. There are like anything between 10,000 to 18, 20,000 people working in these large tech parks. They house multiple different companies, and there is a property management team that manages all the operations, including waste. Now, I think globally, I wouldn't say only in India, but globally, when it comes to waste, the concept is always my waste needs to be trashed somewhere. No, so just put those black bags and put it out. Now, this is should not be happening in the 21st century. In the 21st century, when we are talking circular economy, then we need to know where that waste is going and how is it going to come back to us. And how is it going to reduce our footprint in terms of materials used? So this is the conversation then that we have with aligned partners and aligned customers. And this is what happened 10 years ago when we acquired customers like RMZ, where we said, look, you have almost 6 tons of waste generated per day. And 50% or 40% of that is wet waste, food waste, garden litter, and all of that. So you need to, or let's work together to make that happen, that on site you manage your wet waste. And that is where they put the infrastructure in place for it. And we help them with, managing even the dry waste and a good accountability of what happens to all those waste streams. Yeah, so the same thing happens today, except that, now the wet waste, because the quantities are quite big, half of it actually goes to a bio CNG plant where there is recovery of energy. And then we have our own material recovery facility. So all the paper, plastic, metal, glass goes into this facility. And what we have today is a very good tracking mechanism. It's an online tracking mechanism. And this is, Sabira, you started it at that time. Now we are well established. And that is our USP that we give to all our customers. Yeah, that you can, on a live basis, know where your waste is going and how much of it is going into recycling. Yeah, so today when you're talking circular economy, recycling, not the best solution, but a better solution than the others that you have, versus, just the energy recovery through the co-processing in a cement kiln. So we do have a good sense of how circular each of our customers are, and that is a report that we give to them. Yeah, so if I may pause here or just continue to say that like an RMZ today, we have many, many more similar customers, bigger, Also, the kind of tech parks that we work with are much bigger now than the RMZs.
You made all of that sound so easy. Um, what was that? Take me back real quickly, because as I was doing my research and understanding again the journey of the nonprofit entity of this into the for-profit entity, that those pitches, that sales process toward an eco park to whatever might technology park, that couldn't have been easy in the beginning. What was that first foothold to make that argument in that case to these parks to say, hey, you all are doing this incorrectly. This is how this should be done. How did you begin to defy that model?
Yes. So, that's the reason why we actually had a second entity, which was a private limited. So
Right.
not
Yeah.
managing waste has to be a business model. It has to be based on a services that you provide to any generator. Yeah. And so we had to get out of people's mindset of, if I'm giving you my waste, I'm done with it. And, and I'm doing my charity. Yeah. By not,
Oh, yes.
yeah. So it was difficult to actually have like almost 5 to 6 times what the current pricing, the existing pricing was. And so therefore communicate the value add for that, that big jump in price was of course a challenge. But in the early days, Bangalore was, or India was going through the problems of waste management. There is the dumping that one sees on the road. There is the, the landfills which are high up there. There is the burning that takes place. All that is visible to everybody. And everyone now, of course, you have that concept of air quality, getting really bad. But 12 years ago, air quality was not such a big part of everyone's thought process. But even so, luckily for us, you do have the first movers. And I think that is, something that should go out to everybody. There's always a starting point. There is always those good souls who are more than good souls. They're also decision makers. Yeah. So in finding those decision makers, who are the good souls, we had our first big successes. And, these were conversations that Sabira and I had. Every time we kind of got a good soul, signed up, that was enough for us to kind of stay on track, very motivated till the next one came along. So it was one by one. And this is a conversation that we continue to have here in our weekly meetings, monthly meetings. Our sales teams really, really struggle. It takes like sometimes you're pursuing a customer for 2 years and you can't give up. So that's the kind of resilience you need. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, Wilma, your concept of that ideal customer is somebody who gets it and can also have the dollars to spend. We did find them. You do have to refine the diamonds as you find them. But we also, that's not to say that we kept everybody, actually. Like, I remember I was managing our customers and we lost one of our major customers to our competitor. And it was a combination of reasons, partially maybe because I was a foreigner, partially because they didn't provide the right infrastructure and the right operational support to actually manage the volume of waste that they were generating. But the sales part is hard, is I'm definitely agreeing there, and customer retention is hard. And I guess, Wilma, the question I have is, have you seen some customers go further and push the envelope beyond the decentralized waste management? Has there been more progress for those early adopters into new areas of circular economy?
Yeah, they continue to be few and, far between, but there are people, as I said, today you have an ESG, which is tugging the strings, so to say, because people have to now report. So that is one thing that is kind of pushing and nudging decision makers, top management, bringing attention to the fact that they have to report on what's really happening in their own facilities. Also, what has happened well is that you have now a certification. The LEED certification that you have for green buildings does not recognize waste. It recognizes water, it recognizes energy, waste in terms of a circular system. It is no motivation for anybody to get if you are LEED certified, doesn't mean that you are have a good waste recovery system in place. Now, the green buildings, I think it's US based, GBCI, has now set up a separate certification for waste management. And that is called the True certification. And it's exactly like how we are playing out our zero waste program. Yeah, so that is working in our favor. We've had many companies, bigger companies, want this True certification, and we have now become known in the industry for the fact that we provide consultancy services so that people can get the True certification. So there is two things. One is, for those who are not our customers, also we help them get the True certification. But for our own customers, because we've been working with them for a period of time, they very easily slip into getting recognized for the work that they have. So it's helped, and that is where it's so important to have these kind of, the industry also supporting us in this manner.
I love where that's meeting. It's like resilience of a business model meets the sort of pursuing the ultimate circular economy business model, meets that then economic policy pressure and even maybe mandate to some degree of achieving true certification from corporate. I love when that happens, because we see that. I mean, we've seen that a little bit where we've got some models here in the US that are aligning with interests consumer wise, but it's great to hear that that's aligning for you all as well.
If I may just add, so True also starts with reduce. So it pushes people to no paper cups, no single use, all of those items which are part of now convenience and should not be part of 21st century anymore. So that's the starting point. Yeah.
I love that. In my question then on when we're talking about business models and that resilience, I'm uniquely interested in your take on the incumbents, those that have been doing it a certain way and are resisting change. Or I don't know this answer at all, actually. In India, at the time when you all were really pushing this, in what was that, 2013, when you really turned it to a for-profit business model.
Yes.
You had incumbents, and then is there also a lack of infrastructure that also was playing into this? And I'm kind of curious which one's worse. Is it an incumbent that's a barrier, or a lack of a model that's a barrier? Because in the US, I would like to think that we probably, more than anything, we just have incumbents that just are resistant to change, and that's the force we're dealing with. But I'm curious on what your take is of which was worse. What did you have to fight more?
Yeah, it was both, because you did have even existing customers not have the right infrastructure, say for things like garden litter. So they had a process for say 70 or 80% of their waste, but we want to take them to the next level. So that's where, again, infrastructure. So there was the common kind of barrier, which is infrastructure, and this infrastructure is for both. Yeah. The new ones, of course, are at a starting point, and so their investment in infrastructure is much higher, especially now because, luckily technology has kind of moved, even for composting, bio-CNG, for the decentralized, for smaller kind of volumes, managing smaller volumes. You do have good technologies. So our new customers, we're constantly pushing for the best infrastructure in terms of the latest kind of systems that are available. So shredders, etc. The older customers did not have that, so we had to bring them up to for them to also catch up. So those catching up happens on both ways. Also, there has been this traditional, and even in any part of the world, you don't have the kind of sorting that is required for recycling. And that costs, I mean, that's an investment in people, because it's a very extensive exercise. Even though today you have things like vision sensing, AI is now being introduced into sorting as well. But it's a very complicated sorting because the materials are so complicated. So therefore, you do need that manual sorting, and that is investment in people that is required, which customers are, still very reluctant to pay for. Both customers. Now, we started our journey with getting people to understand minimum wages, pay minimum wages to our field team. And now for everybody, we're talking about living wages, which is like 30% more than the minimum wages. I don't see why that should be a problem with the kind of, abundance of goodness, of things, stuff that you see, in all of these huge corporate campuses. Yeah, so we want that minimum wages, and luckily for us, I think out of our 50 odd customers, about 3 have in the last 2 years, agreed to pay us minimum wage, to pay us living wages.
So yeah, that is a big milestone. I think also, Garr, to your question, the incumbent, there's, I would say, like 2 types of incumbents. There's one is the informal sector, where there is the collection of waste. Like in India, actually,
interesting.
Culturally, there is like a very negative relationship with waste, where it's kind of like extractive, meaning like if I'm going to sell you my waste newspaper, and from like historically the caste system, like whoever's dealing with my waste is beneath me. That's like the old historical kind of context of the human relationships. And then that had evolved into informal systems of groups of people processing the waste kind of just like in the shadows of society. As like one kind of incumbent. And then the other, I would say, I don't know, Wilma, if you call this like incumbent or competitor, but you have other providers that, are not Saahas Zero Waste that try to work with that informal economy and like kind of play in between the lines of formalizing them, but not necessarily like going to the extent of like the living wages. And like Wilma's company, the workers are able to have equity in the company, or like we have programs like that. So it's really taking it to the next level, versus some of the other players are still kind of, I would say, like in this gray area of how much they're formalizing the informal.
Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that, Sabira. I kind of misunderstood on the incumbent, but I just like to add, so exactly like how it is. See, because you want to cut costs, you kind of cut corners with the field team that are actually the main people doing work. So you cut corners by not paying minimum wages and living wages.
Oh, like the typical playbook of taking advantage of labor. Oh,
yes,
okay.
Yes. And the other thing is that you do what you call, and this happens with many companies who are just entering the space. They actually do what you call cherry picking. So you will pick only the waste which has better economic value, and that's about 10% of the total waste that is generated. So then you will cut your labor cost, your workforce cost, and only do the cherry picking, and that's how you can meet revenue. Some of the companies go so far as to say, we will pay you instead of the service fee that we have, that we will actually pay you for this waste which has got better economic value. So that's the kind of ecosystem that we are currently also battling with.
What's the cherry picking categories that you see most often? Is that typical of, is that aluminum, like is that those type of categories?
So it is newspapers, It is the aluminum cans. It is what you call PET bottles, which is your
Okay.
water bottles, the packaging that is used for shampoo, which is a better quality plastic. Rigid plastics is more this kind of cherry picked.
That's so interesting because newspaper I think is probably of that category here as well. But that's so interesting that that is almost directly aligned with everyone values those commodities the same.
Yeah, those are global commodity
Yeah,
prices.
those are the
Yeah,
global gold.
they flow where the dollars are. Um, Wilma, the decentralized waste management solution and zero waste program, that also takes, you're mentioning the field team. That's like a huge operational lift, as well as the logistics of aggregating all the waste off-site, and then managing the material recovery facility. Tell us about like the challenges and then also kind of the beautiful coordination of the logistics of moving everything where it needs to go, and the nature of the end processors, as well as how established are the end markets.
Yeah, so that's the difference between just trashing something where you pick up from point A and everything goes to point B and everything is forgotten in between. Nobody sees what happens to the system beyond that. Now, in our system, when you take dry waste, which is all paper, plastic, metal, glass, it will first, in our tech parks, there's what we call a sorting that takes place in a small room in the tech park itself. Because it does need that little bit of cleaning that takes place. Whatever you do, there will be some contamination, so some amount of sorting takes place on campus itself. And then it's kept stored for a pickup twice in a week. So imagine now the tech park has to have that much of little bit of space. And again, that's an infrastructure and investment that the tech park has to keep. So once that is established, that they have that kind of quantity available for pickup twice a week, then it goes to our larger material recovery facility. And that material recovery facility has a capacity of about 10 tons of waste per day. So all our different customers from different locations, the waste comes to this material recovery facility. And there you have sorting that takes place in almost 30 different categories. So you do have plastic sorted, which is rigids and flexibles. Flexibles will be about 6 different types. Rigids will be about 5 different types. So that recycling is very, very specific. So you cannot send a PET or a rigid plastic, one plastic bottle to a recycler that is actually recycling your HDP or your shampoo bottles, your rigid plastics made up of shampoo. So that's the kind of specific requirement that you have. So therefore, now you can imagine we've sorted out, so many different types of materials. Say your flexible plastic, which is your chips, wrappers, etc. Now you have to put about 4 to 5. You'll have to put about 60 kgs or 70 kgs or up to 100 kgs of that, compact it and make a little cube, a bale out of that, and then those bales, 10 tons of that will have to be going to different recyclers. Yeah, and then we have tie-ups with all of these recyclers. We have done a due diligence with all of these recyclers to make sure they are authorized, because we want to make sure that they have the necessary capabilities to recycle. Then you will send those materials, and of course then that is a tracking mechanism that also is there, so we know where our materials are going. And then of course these materials, because now that's raw material for the recycling, it's good, it's clean, and he takes it and then they pay us for that material.
You all probably sort to such a degree that I hope I'm not assuming something too here, but that there's a little bit of a premium probably on what you all are delivering. I mean, this is probably a high quality feedstock.
It is
Okay.
extremely good quality feedstock, and that is the kind of value that we bring to our recyclers. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
I think the innovation here that I would love to know a little bit more about is that initial sorting process at the tech park.
Yes.
that is so critical from an infrastructure standpoint. When was that developed in your business model? I mean, was that something that you always thought should be a part of this model? Or how did you come across saying, you know what, we're going to need to ask for this space because it's going to make that much of a difference?
Yes, because we realized that if you have, and that's the reason why when we first started, we realized that this cherry picking was on account of the fact that the other materials, whilst they technically always said they could be recycled, they were not being recycled because of this barrier of contamination. So if you remove that contamination, simple things that you do, then it goes into a proper system of recycling. Again, of course, the cost element was again the barrier. So therefore, if you get paid for it, then it works. If you don't get paid, then, your whole system would collapse.
And actually, I mean, coming from the US and even coming back to the US, I have not seen that level of system and systemic waste management anywhere else. Like Saahas is the only place that I've seen that happen. And the economics of India make sense, right? Labor costs here in the US are too high to make it really feasible, and you're not going to get the return on the output with the recyclers. But in India, you can make a living wage and support, a team of more than 100 doing that. But I think calling it an innovation, Garr, I think is spot on, because it's not really happening anywhere else.
Well, part of what I'm not going to call out a client of yours, because I've had a conversation with the US counterpart of a client of yours, and I'm not going to call them out, but I'm fascinated that they're a client of yours and they likely are partaking in this innovation. And I remember having a conversation with this client on the US side about this particular maybe type of innovation. And I remember just getting absolutely shot down. And that was just a non-starter. And I think, Sabira, you're right. It's a part of, it wasn't designed for in the building. It wasn't a part of the economics of how they're structured with their clients and how they operate their facility. And so it's just a non-starter in the conversation. But it was cool to see them listed as and I will even give more of a hint, quoted on your website of how much of a success story they are from your solution.
Exactly. And so we have some innovations to export globally around sorting.
Yes. Yes.
Well, Wilma, the other thing that I love about Saahas Zero Waste is decentralized waste management, innovation. We talked through how it works, but then at the same time, we're building an EPR business. You're building a products business. And since I have not been in India, but you have built a textiles business, maybe even a repair business. So there's a lot of ground to cover there. Maybe pick the one that was the most challenging that you've had to overcome, and tell us a little bit about one of those businesses that you're excited about the progress of.
Yeah, and luckily for us, this business is now getting a lot of attention globally, and that is the textiles. Yeah, the fast fashion is that whole bubble is now being burst in terms of, questioning the huge volumes of waste, which, consumers and, everyone has been told that it's fine. We have our boxes here, you put all your, end of life or whatever, your used clothing, and it'll go somewhere and it'll get recycled. And now we've kind of done a lot of work on actually reporting on how that is not true. And we've now built a fairly good in the last 3-4 years that we're working in this space of how, exactly the same thing that we have done for all different kinds of dry waste, we have brought into textile waste as well. So you do have the similar kind of sorting, and you see that, the blends, which are like cotton mixed with all kinds of poly in it, how they have recycling is almost impossible. And so therefore, we've actually, when you come to our TRF, you see how even to be able to retrieve cotton thread from a cotton apparel, you will need to snip off buttons, take off the zips, and then make the distinction between printed, embroidered, and just plain whites, so that about 5% of your waste can actually be recovered, and threads and cotton can be recovered. And the rest of it, very little solutions for that. So therefore, the recycling, therefore, is really not a very good option currently in the textile space. So we are promoting swap, and you do have that elsewhere in the world, the thrifting, etc. But this is now, where we are also breaking barriers of people not wanting to do it, but here now people understanding that it's much better to swap than to buy anything new. And then, of course, we do have these self-help groups that, again, take some of the older apparel and convert it into different products. So the kind of sorting that is there is for swap, for SHG groups, making products out of it. Then we also have people coming, typical, I would say, smaller businesses coming and buying good sorted material, which they put out in a second-hand market, in a large mainstream market in smaller towns and villages. So that's the penetration then, and the bridge then between urban and peri-urban, rural, etc., where they get access to second-hand apparel and all kinds of textiles, which is then going out into these markets. So it's now being quite well understood. But of course, now we are, just managing barely 1 ton of waste per day in this fashion. Around that much. And the kind of quantity. So we need far many organizations working in this space to be able to sort out the textile problem. And we do need the brands to be able to do much more.
I understand the distribution aspect of that, of finding those secondary markets or end markets. Could you explain to me a little bit more the front end business model? Because I'm guessing, or I'm supposing, it's not the same as a tech park. What's the front end of that model look like, where you're pulling that stream from?
Yeah, so that is again a sense of individual responsibility. So we need these kind of we need a lot of materials coming into our facility. So we conduct a lot of collection drives. So we do it in apartments, we do it with our tech park customers, keep these boxes and tell them, they can place their materials into that, their apparel, etc. And then we have a collection system. It's really right now our function of textiles is at a negative. So it's actually bleeding, and it's not easy for us to say, okay, we have to somehow continue making sure we don't stop here. But the model would work very well if everybody paid again a fee for just putting their end of their apparel, the used ones, into a box. That is not yet being established, but hopefully we will bring that shortly. So we do drives, we incur a big expense for the logistics of collection, and very often the quantities are still small, so it doesn't meet the entire cost of logistics.
You know what this reminds me of a little bit? Sabira, and if this is foreign to you, Wilma, I'll explain more, which is those metal boxes that we have around various cities. Donation
box.
Well, but some of them aren't donation. And that's the fascinating part. I ended up doing more research because I was fascinated by some of these models. Some of them are donation. Some of them are like for profit. And they take those clothes or those shoes, and they have some sort of distribution channel that goes into that. Am I confusing this type of model? I mean, how do you all receive those clothes from the consumer? Is that, I'm guessing it's not mailed. Is it brought to your facility? How do you receive that textile from a consumer?
In 2 or 3 ways. One is, yes, we proactively go out to apartment complexes. We kind of conduct we have some champions in these apartments. They conduct a little bit of a drive, and we go and actively go and collect it. And then, of course, we place collection boxes in some strategic locations. But there again, the quantities are always very, very small. Again, it comes at a cost for collection. And then we also place it in some public locations. Our own office is a collection point. So people come and drop the clothes here.
And then probably unknown too. Not if it's low, you also don't know whether it's going to be consistent. You don't know maybe how much you'll get at any given time.
Exactly. And so therefore we
Right.
need this, this behavior change of everybody actually making it a habit that you kind of find these collection boxes for your old clothes.
Like in the history of zero waste and providing the decentralized waste management, there was some tipping point that you had a certain tonnage that the economics started making sense and it was working out. Do you have like that same idea of, or a similar framework for textiles, is when you hit X tons per day, the math, like you'll get enough similar type of aggregate, similar types of blends to say like, hey, it's worth it for the next processor or receiver to actually take the material? Is there a number in your mind where the volume starts to make sense?
Yeah, so you do have to touch that at least. 5 tons per day is what you need to touch for it to actually work economically. But you do need people to pay for, especially the recycling. So right now we don't have recycling taking place at all, or very, very little, just cottons. And that too, white cottons have some kind of an end market. The rest of it is that the end markets for that are not there. So we send a lot of this to just the cement kilns for only energy recovery and not recycling. So, but even so, we do need to have that volume because that's the capacity of our facility. And that capacity needs, there are people there who are equipped to sort. So we do need those kind of volumes.
Yeah, totally. I'm curious also, when I was there, Bangalore had these municipal rules that required bulk generators to process waste because they were bulk generators, creating more than 10 kgs of waste per day. Can you tell us a little bit about the Indian regulatory landscape and how that's influencing the business, either in municipal waste or in e-waste, plastics, textile? Like what are you seeing as the direction of the regulations on the ground?
Yes. So, we've had very good regulations. I mean, right through in the last 20 years, very good progressive regulations coming up with a lot of good revisions as and when required. And so that's how you have the EPR and you have plastic, e-waste, and now even textile waste. In another 1 year, you will have an EPR for textiles, and then, some kind of systems will come in place. But the fact is that, there is in the rules a very good sense of making a distinction between the households who are individual households versus households that are in a larger apartment or waste which is generated in a tech park. So when your waste is collectively coming up to more than 100 kgs a day, that particular entity is kind of identified as a bulk waste generator. So the bulk waste generator is our potential customer because the municipality is not supposed to provide waste management services to the bulk generator. That is supposed to be taken out of the municipal scope of work and come into the scope of work of private enterprises like us. Also, then, we have a very vibrant startup system, etc. The informal sector, they are also moving their businesses into formal systems. So that is the kind of market size that is available to organizations like us. And that's a huge market size because it's about 40% of the waste that, the urban city kind of generates. Unfortunately, in the last, 10, 12 years, that distinction and demarcation was never seen on the ground. So you had the municipal corporation, doing the same kind of work. And so therefore, a lot of subsidies that the municipal corporation was giving to these bulk generators was affecting us because then, we were kind of not competitive in terms of pricing. But now, Sabira, that concept of a user fee is also being pushed into the space where municipal corporations, including the Bangalore Municipal Corporation, has initiated a mandatory service fee or a user fee for everybody to pay. And if now you do use the services of the municipal corporation, you have to pay the municipal corporation of quite a heavy tariff, which is like 12 rupees per kg. And that for us is far higher than our own service.
Yeah.
So
totally.
that's going to be a tipping point for us. Of course, it's early days, so celebrations are a little bit muted currently. Yeah.
I love hearing about all of these progressive policies. I'm a little almost jealous even then. But when it comes to those policies, and are those being implemented or passed because of some sort of acute pain that urban areas are going through with massive amounts of waste or urban density or pollution, where that needed to be actually mandated or passed in terms of policy? Is that why these are being passed and why these models are now being essentially supported through policies?
Yeah, so everyone sees the need for it, no? So that is the reason, and luckily for us, but it's also a lot of push from civil society groups. There are many people working towards better systems, and there's constant engagement with different municipal corporations, government, the not-for-profits, the non-governmental organizations, constantly bringing attention to the systems changes that are required, helps these regulations. And so I really feel that it's good for this engagement to continuously take place so that we are making revisions. And I've seen that we've got good revisions in place. Now, of course, we need to make sure they are followed.
Yeah, I was always inspired by how progressive India's policy landscape was. And even at the time, the plastics EPR rules were really progressive. So, the US is fairly behind. Like, we always talk about being behind Europe, but we're actually like really behind India, which I feel embarrassing, I think, from like a practitioner perspective. But looking ahead, Wilma, looking at the next 5 to 10 years, I know you also switched out of your role from being the CEO and passed the baton. So if you tell us a little bit about that, and then also like looking ahead, what are you hopeful for and excited about for the future of the business?
Yeah, so it was actually a very smooth exercise, and for that I'm very grateful to our current CEO Shobha Raghavan, who was with us. So she came out of she had taken a sabbatical when she had a baby, so she took 10 years sabbatical. She's an electrical engineer who came in her second career, wanted to enter into a space like waste management. So she joined us at the very early days. Sabira knows her well. And right from the start, she's been with us. So when obviously, we do want to have a good succession plan in place. So Shobha has accepted the baton. She's been there now this last 1 year, really putting a lot of processes in place. We are now IMS certified. So, we do have a certification for our processes, etc. And this is the certification that has come from TUV sued. So it's quite a well-established certification body. So it's one to have a certification and it's the other to actually put those processes in place. And that's been the struggle that she's kind of working with very, very closely. And of course, our business expansion is now a focus of this year. That we do want. We've started so many different smaller projects. We talked of circular textiles, we talked of the repair and refurbishment. So all those are coming out of, just a kind of a trial or a pilot phase into full-fledged business verticals for us. And then, of course, our geographies. Now we are very confident, Sabira, of actually cracking the north of the country, which is Delhi and all these areas where we were always very afraid to go to. Now we are quite confident that they are ready for us, so we should be there. So that's where building teams in these new regions is very, very challenging. So I am, of course, now moved out of Bangalore. I'm in Goa. we have a team in Goa also, again, a new geography. So for us, this year, our big focus is on financial stability, because we do want to make sure that, top line, bottom line, all of that is well aligned. So financial stability, and also recognizing that our zero waste program is our most impactful program. So that's how we are describing it. So giving it the due respect that it needs. So in the expansion plans, that takes a very big piece of our plan. And then, of course, making sure that our impact is actually measured far more than it is currently measured. So sitting on top of or sitting at the bottom of all our top priorities, impact is like very big focus in the next few years. So we really want to make sure that this impact is not just for our own customers, but also because we work with a lot of partners, the informal sector partnerships that we have. We want to make sure that, we bring them into the same kind of focus on environmental and social impact. Minimum wages, living wages, all that should also go out to the informal sector through the partnerships that we have built with them. Yeah.
I have then one more question. If Sabira, it does not as well. It was really inspiring to see your growth, the organization's growth, going from 8 tons of waste daily to 100 tons of waste daily, and with aspirations for multi-hundreds of tons of waste daily. What do you have? Anything top of mind as some of the most important lessons for entrepreneurs in thinking about scaling circular economy business models, that whether it's entrepreneurs in the US system or even other international systems? What do you have lessons wise where you could help tell us a little bit more about how to think about this?
So first, the definition of circular economy. So I think as an entrepreneur who is coming into this space, he really needs to understand that, that circular economy is about bringing materials back. It is about reduce. So those are the models that that the entrepreneur has to be convinced about. Yeah, because if he is just saying, circular economy is a good pitch to make to my investors, and so it doesn't matter how I understand circular economy, then that itself is somewhere down the line will definitely hit you back. Yeah, so I think it is important for all of us, and there is really these business models. If we have all of us as entrepreneurs pushing in that direction, you will come to a tipping point where you will see that all of this will really now be even profitable businesses for everybody. So there is that, we are in the 21st century, and this is the economy of the 21st century. Yeah, so there is a need for all entrepreneurs first define circular economy, incineration, waste to energy. There is a space for it, but it is a limited space in the circular economy conversations. So we'd like, therefore, for that to be recognized. We definitely want to have making sure that through this business models, we are reducing our footprint of virgin materials. And that, I think, is, where the whole circular economy conversation has to be better understood. Also, the social aspect. So we can't have entrepreneurs saying that, okay, it's too expensive, so we cut cost on the number of people that have to be employed and the wages that we pay them. A number of people is also important. And this is where livelihood, irrespective of AI, you do need people on the ground. AI is tech is not going to be the kind of game changer that it's made out to be, at least when it comes to waste management and circular economy principles in waste management.
So continue to focus on the impact, right? There is the reduction of extraction of new material and great working opportunities for the working class.
Impact in people. Couldn't be a better message to end on. Yeah.
And professionals, we really need people who are highly qualified in this space as well. Yeah. The engineers, the business MBA graduates, the Sabiras, who were there and made so much of a difference, yeah, for that. So we do need
Yeah,
those
and
people.
actually, yeah, one of our beautiful, I guess, like remnants of working at Saahas is we have an alumni group that was started kind of informally just as a WhatsApp group. When some of us left, we wanted to stay in touch with our peers, so we had a WhatsApp group, and now Wilma and team have turned that into like a formal group that will have like a virtual meeting every once in a while. And I will say personally, some of the best friends I've made in my life I met while living and working in India, and is because it was a home to people, professionals, and even, the people who are working in the field. Like I stay in touch with some of those folks because there's true friendship and camaraderie in having that environmental social impact and like having a good time while doing it. So thank you, Wilma, for building the company that made that happen.
Thank you, Sabira, for being part of it in so many different ways. Yeah. So,
and thank you for joining us
I'm here
on the podcast.
and I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to seeing it. So, yeah. So, yeah. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I know everyone's gonna love this and what you've been able to teach us today. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Garr. Thank you, Sabira. And bye. Have a nice evening.